All right, so here we are just 24 hours away from Election Day in Tennessee. I've seen people call this a bellwether district. It really isn't, but if it does become a bellwether district, holy cow, we are seeing a shift in the way in which people vote. Now, I'm not going to go over a lot of numbers today because I did that in my previous video about the Tennessee 7th District. Go ahead and check that out if you want to look at the polls and you want to look at the early vote numbers. There haven't been any early votes since that day, so those numbers haven't changed. But there is one number that we're going to talk about in this video, which is in regards to Election Day voting, looking at the primary that happened a month ago and seeing what we could expect, because the primary, as well as what we saw in New Jersey and in Virginia, we're starting to see more Democrats actually turn out on Election Day. So Election Day is becoming less of this big bump that we should expect for Republicans. That's getting lowered and lowered and lowered. So we're going to go ahead and delve into that. But I also want to just delve into the campaign a little bit in the 7th Congressional District. Now, I went here on Matt Van Epps' website, and you can see that he and the Democrats, but let's start with Van Epps first, he is bringing out the big guns. So they have this rally going on, okay? And we'll get to this in a second, where you have Speaker Mike Johnson, the governor, Bill Lee, didn't even know who the governor of Tennessee was, Marsha Blackburn, and Bill Hagerty. Didn't even know who Bill Hagerty was until I saw this. I mean, that just shows how useless a lot of these Republican senators are, because you haven't even heard them because they're just Trump lackeys. And you have state senators, you have congressmen and all that. They're bringing out a lot of people here. Now, as you can see, the doors open at 7:30. The program starts at 8 and everything here. Here's the thing that I find quite interesting. They have no location as to where this is. Right? I mean, it's like here they say, go ahead and join us, here's RSVP, Clarksville. I mean, it doesn't say at all that it's an online thing, but if doors open, I would assume that would be a physical thing. So I'm kind of wondering, it says address upon RSVP right there. Why are they holding the address? Okay, that seems kind of weird to me, but I just found that interesting. Now, Trump is finally starting to make an appearance. Now, one thing that I've been saying is that some of the Republican big guns like Marsha Blackburn have been coming out in this election actually talking about, but Trump has kind of had an arm's length away. He's saying vote for Matt Van Epps, but he's not necessarily going all out. And I would say that he's still not doing that because he doesn't like backing losers. But as you can see here, Trump makes 11th hour plea for Matt Van Epps over Aftyn Behn, who he claims hates Christianity. This is where I think a lot of things are going to start changing for Democrats. And one of those things is that if you have a positive message based on how you're going to help people, which is what Aftyn Behn has been doing this whole entire election. She's constantly talking about affordability, affordability, affordability. That's going to be the message that resonates. What all we have here with the Republicans is she's a horrible communist, socialist, and all that. That's just not going to fly. As a matter of fact, if you want to go to my Substack, I actually wrote about this. The link down below for my Substack. This is available to all people. If you want to join my Substack to help out, please do so. Talking about how this socialist label with Aftyn Behn is not going to work, because if any of you know anything about Southern politics, socialism and communism has always been a label for black. Okay, it's always been a dog whistle. It's always been code. If they didn't want to say the actual N-word or something like that, they would say they're a socialist. All you ever heard was Martin Luther King was a socialist and a communist. So when you have a young white woman who has a Southern accent, for those of you who say she doesn't have a Southern accent, trust me, I'm from the North. She does not sound like she's from the North. She has a Southern accent, maybe not a strong one, but she has a Southern accent nonetheless. It doesn't stick the same way. Okay, so we'll see how this works out. Now, I am over on Blue Sky. If people didn't know, this is my Blue Sky. We're going to talk about this little graphic that I have up here when it comes to Election Day voting. Now, this is, I think, going to be a key of what happens tomorrow. Okay. So what we've seen in elections up to 2024, haven't seen it really in 2025 yet. We've seen the Democrats do really well in vote by mail. We then see the Republicans do really well in early in-person voting, but it could be split between Democrats and Republicans. And then we see the Republicans do quite well on election day. Now here in the state of Tennessee, it's one of those states that vote by mail. It's pure absentee. You need to have that excuse as to why you can't show up to an early vote location or election day location. So this is the reason why you see VBM, that's vote by mail number, is low. Okay. But let's look at the Democratic number first. It's the one on the bottom, but let's look at the Democratic number first. We can see in the primaries that Aftyn Behn was in, and she ran against 3 other candidates, and it was close. It was like a quarter, like 25, 25, 25, 25. I think she had like 27. It was a close matchup, but in early vote, 53% of those who voted in the Democratic primary voted in early in-person voting. 44.6% of those voters voted on election day. So that's showing that it's almost 50-50 between the Democrats as far as turning out to vote on election day or early votes. So we are starting to see this evening out. But what's even more interesting is the Republican number. So you can see in the Republican number here, 47% of Republicans voted early in the Republican primary just a month ago, and 51.7% voted on election day. Now we have Republicans voting more early now and not voting as much on election day. Does this matter? Yes, because according to the poll that I talked about in my last video, again, go ahead and look at that because I break it down more into detail. You saw in the poll that was done by Emerson that of those who have already voted, Aftyn Behn has a pretty decent lead, and that if Van Epps wants to win, he has to really make up that number on election day. But it also showed a disproportionate amount of people voting on election day. It showed, I believe, 56% of people either hadn't voted yet or going to vote on election day, okay? If the Republican number here is already at 51% of primary voters, it might be hard for the overall number of people voting on election day to be 56%. And we are starting to see this. We saw in New Jersey, okay, we saw the early votes become, the early in-person voting become much more Democratic. And yes, the Republicans gained more on election day, but barely. If you remember the election results, and we were watching on election day, which, by the way, I am going to be doing a live stream of this election. Go ahead and check that out tomorrow. You will see that the numbers didn't go up. It was just kind of flat. So to me, we've come to this point where I truly believe that the Democrats are in a decent position. Now, will I make predictions? No, because again, we don't know what election day will look like. We have no idea. Another thing that I think is very interesting for Aftyn Behn is that Williamson County, which is where Franklin was located, that was her best county in the primary. And that would probably be one of her weaker counties in the general election. Will there be some offset there? Interestingly enough. Now, I do want to make one other point about this that I just forgot to make. This breaks down the voting methods of only Davidson and Montgomery County. The other counties, I cannot get the voting methods for the primaries. So regardless, over half of your vote is going to be here. Another big chunk is going to be from Williamson. And my guess is it's going to be the same. If you look at Davidson and Montgomery together, they're pretty much the same when it comes to that. So there might not be this huge influx of election day votes, especially in a special election, that we will see. Now, is this a bellwether or not? I always say special elections are caveats, okay? And I think we need to still treat it that way. All right, so thank you all very much for this. I will see you in the next video. Remember, again, I am doing a live stream of the election tomorrow, so go ahead and check that out. I'll see you all later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.